Well, Slushy, thank you, Buckaroos. How the heck are you? Been having a little bit of time getting this one situated for some reason. Nothing wants to fucking work the way it's supposed to. Anyways, I digress. I get so frustrated, man. I'm a one-man operation, and sometimes things just don't want to work the way they're supposed to. Let's see if I can get this figured out real fast. There we go. Been using the same prop to set this up for I don't know, months at this point, at least 8 weeks. And all of a sudden I try to set it up today. The prop is wobbly and I can't figure out what is different. But to grab something different, but trying to find something around here isn't fucking easy. Anyways, take a breath, get back to Zen. Anyways, I digress. I had an idea to do two versions of a Manhattan or using a common thread, to pull the cocktail together. What I decided to do with this particular version was do two different corn whiskeys, even though a Manhattan is traditionally made with a rye or a bourbon, or high rye bourbon might be more accurate. I decided to use a corn whiskey, but two different corn whiskeys to do the same cocktail. So what I've got here with the first one, it's one I've been working on for a while. I bought this product back in June, just before I had my knee surgery in Branson. As a matter of fact, the McDougal's in Branson. This is the Wood Hat Cask Strength Bloody Butcher Red Corn Whiskey. This one comes in at 120.6. I've had a couple of different versions of this actually. Because when I bought this one, I really liked it, but then I had some friends say they weren't crazy about it. I had a friend give me his, or that and I could definitely taste different. And I had another friend have another version of it, and all three of them were different, but I don't think any of us were realizing at the time that these are single barrel whiskeys, right? So every one is going to be a little bit different. Anyways, so of the three that I've tried, in all honesty, this is the one I like the best. The one friend that gave me his bottle of whiskey, he kept trying to describe notes that it had, and I said, no, that's not right, because the notes of my particular bottle were completely different. When I described the notes of mine, he said, no, that's not what mine tastes like, until I finally put it together that we're talking about a single barrel whiskey. So even though we're talking about the same corn, the barrels have aged this whiskey completely different. Anyways, so here's what we got here. So yeah, I wanted to do these basically the same, but changed the whiskey. So I've got in both these Manhattans, I've got 2 ounces of the whiskey, a half ounce of sweet vermouth, a few dashes of black walnut bitters, because I want to use the same bitters for both whiskeys, or both Manhattans rather. And then of course a dark cherry sitting at the bottom of the glass. Uh, Mercy, that's delicious. That really is good. Yeah. It seems like when I try to set up these videos, when I'm pressed for time or I'm trying to do them real fast, I can always get them right about on time. And when I have all kinds of time to set them up an hour ahead of time, I'm always late. There's always something at the end. Oh man, why is this taking so long? And that's what happened with this one. Is I started setting this up started setting this up about 8 to go on at 9, and then at the end I just couldn't get that prop to work right for some reason. Even though it's the same damn prop I've been using for at least a couple months. All of a sudden, every time I try to angle it, it would be wobbly. So how are you wobbly now? You've been working fine for 2 fucking months. And I decided to find something different. I was getting really frustrated. But if I've got 10 minutes to set up a video, some reason I'm able to get it all, if I'm pressed for time, I'm able to set her up right away with no issues. But if I've got an hour to set it up, it seems like I'm always late. Damn, that's a damn fine Manhattan. That really is. Yeah, no, traditionally a Manhattan is done with a rye or a high rye bourbon, or just a bourbon that uses rye as a secondary grain. Um, which is kind of why I wanted to use this corn whiskey. I wanted to take the corn whiskey and put it in an environment where it might not be, I want to take it out of its comfort zone, basically. So let's take a corn whiskey and turn it into a Manhattan. But I want to use two different corn whiskeys. So I want to do a cocktail video that had a common thread. And the common thread here is they're both Manhattans, but they're both corn whiskeys as well. So, and the next one I want to do, in all honesty, I want to do different. I want to do two different American single malt whiskeys as a Manhattan and see how that works as well. I love the American single malt category. I've ran into one or two people that aren't crazy about it, but then again, having when you get to know certain folks, you find out they have an agenda. So I don't think it's the product they have a problem with, uh, per se. It's more so their particular agenda. But anyway, that's a story for another day. I'll get into that on another video. Right now, I just want to talk about these two corn whiskeys. I'm going to set typically I would drink one completely down and then try the other one, but I'm really curious finding the differences between the two. So I've got both of them with me here. Now, this one I used the Pinckney Bend Rusted Whiskey at 100 proof. Now, this particular whiskey, again, it's a corn whiskey. I want to show that to you. There's the backstory. It's hard to read. Through a clear bottle. Why is it empty, Tom? Did you empty the bottle? No, actually, I did not. I poured it into a decanter, and darn, I left the decanter. Where did I put that decanter? I think I took it to the kitchen. Is it behind me? I think I took it to the kitchen. You want it? Yeah, if you can grab it, I'll show them here real quick. So my daughter bought me this decanter. I thought I left it over here because I was going to grab it to show you, but I wanted to put something in it. But for the life of me, I can't remember what that reason was. Anyway, let me set this down. So my wonderful daughter knows her daddy so well, so she bought this decanter for me. It says dad joke loading because I am an endless barrage of dad jokes. And then some. Anyway, so I poured that completely in here. So I take a picture of it when it was completely full, but then I poured a couple ounces out to make this cocktail. But anyway, there, let me show you that there. I am one endless dad joke. Damn it. Anyways, sláinte. So I am noticing some differences right away. Again, so the bitters are the same. Both have black walnut bitters. They have the same sweet vermouth, the same cherry. The only difference in these two Manhattans is the corn whiskey. Two different corn whiskeys, and they are vastly different. So I'm going to start with the wood hat. Now it is a cask strength, it's a little stronger, but right away you will notice it is a little sweeter. I'm going to set this other one down here where I can focus on that one. It is a little sweeter. Actually, let me rephrase. You pretend I haven't tasted the other one yet and just give you the notes this one has to offer. Again, I can't. It is mixed with these other products now, but let me try to explain the differences in the two Manhattans. This one does make a nice Manhattan. It really does. It comes together very well, but it is a sweeter whiskey, right? So you're going to feel those core notes a little bit. You're going to feel those barrel notes mixed in with the other things that this cocktail has to offer. What I did notice when I picked up the second whiskey though right away is it almost feels more earthy, right? It says since everything else I know is the same, I can only surmise the whiskey making a difference is I feel peanut notes. Feeling peanut notes out of from the Pinckney Bend version. And the cocktail doesn't feel as sweet. Now, which one is better? Well, quite frankly, it's really going to depend on you, right? What notes you prefer. I think both make a fine Manhattan. I was just curious because I've never tried to use corn whiskey to make a Manhattan. 'Cause again, typically you want to use a rye or a high rye bourbon, or at the very least a bourbon that uses rye as a secondary. But I had these two corn whiskeys and wanted to try them in this capacity. Quite frankly, I'll probably try both of the same corn whiskeys as an old fashioned at a later time. But today I'm kind of focused on the Manhattan. To be honest with you, I'm really feeling the Manhattan today. That was the big difference between the two. Is that this particular one feels a little sweeter, while that one feels a little earthier, and I'm picking up those peanut notes, which I can only assume is the whiskey. Oh, mercy. Last night I did two martinis, so tonight I thought I'd do two Manhattans. If I do any more tonight, I want to do two more Manhattans. But again, I want to change. I want to keep the cocktail, the thread being the whiskey. I want to want to use two American single malts and see how they react as a Manhattan. Oh damn, they ain't bad at all though. I tell you that right now. So the Manhattan, typically old fashioned is served on the rocks, although it doesn't have to be. Typically, a Manhattan is served straight up, which means I've got it chilled with no ice in the glass. Although some places will serve a Manhattan on the rocks if you ask for it that way. I'm one of those folks. I like my Manhattan straight up. I also like my old fashioned straight up. I'm probably one of the few folks that do like a straight up old fashioned. I'm not a big fan of ice in a glass as I get older. I mean, there was a time I did, but I just don't anymore. The older I get, I don't like whiskey on the rocks anymore because it used to be every time I opened a new whiskey, I would try it neat and on the rocks. And I don't do that anymore because I'm not digging the rocks anymore. Why is that, Tom? Well, why? Because our taste changes as we get older, right? Back in my early drinking days, I would drink whiskey and seven. And then by the time I could hit my mid 20s, I didn't want that sweetness anymore. So I go whiskey and soda. But by the time I hit my 30s, I didn't want those bubbles anymore. So it was whiskey rock. By the time I hit my 40s, yeah, but anyways, you see the progression at this point. Yeah, I don't want the ice anymore. And this time again, I'll use the ice to make a cocktail, but I don't want the ice in the drink. There are a lot of things I thought were good in my 20s. I'm thinking, damn, Tom, really? Yeah. And a lot of that is as products have changed over the years. Jack Daniels, let's take Jack Daniels for instance. Jack Daniels, up until about the early 80s, was a 90 proof whiskey. A lot of people forget that. The Jack Daniels people will want to tell you that they haven't changed their recipe. And that's technically true, but what they've done is they've added more water, which changes the flavor and texture of the whiskey. So I think it was like 83, something around there. That it might have been 86, but somewhere in the 80s, it went from a 90 proof to an 86 proof, and then at some point in the late 80s to early 90s, it became an 80 proof. So at this point, I mean, the proof between the Jack Daniels and the Jim Beam is exactly the same. They're both 80 proof whiskeys, but the price difference has remained the same. Jack Daniels wants to, keep that high price point like they're a better whiskey than Jim Beam, but they really are not. They've never been better. At one point, they were a higher proof, but they're not a better whiskey. Better implying it's a higher quality. Jack Daniels has never been a higher quality than Jim Beam, but at one point it was a higher ABV, but it no longer is. But they're still kind of getting by on that same reputation, right? People buy Jack Daniels, and a lot of folks do still think it's a 90 proof whiskey when it clearly is not. And today's Jack Daniels takes so watered down, it's just insane. So now they have these other versions of Jack Daniels are trying to sell you at incredibly inflated prices to try to regain some of that glory they've lost. And the only people that are getting to buy that nonsense is the same folks that will still buy that whiskey regardless, right? You've got folks that are just so ignorant that won't do any homework, that will just assume it's a good whiskey even though it hasn't been for a very long time. There are better whiskeys available for the same price point than Jack Daniels, and when I say better, again, I mean of a higher quality. Again, if Jack Daniels has got so ridiculous now they got these bonded versions, which are, you know, I was going to say something, but I stopped myself. Again, everything Jack Daniels is still relying on a reputation that they no longer deserve, and they are still getting that reputation from people that refuse to that refuse to live in the present. Tom, are you implying that Jack Daniels is a bad whiskey? No, but I'm not. I'm saying what I'm saying is that it isn't a better whiskey than than say Jim Beam. It's not a better whiskey than Jim Beam, and they're charging a lot more for a product because they're relying on a past reputation that no longer exists. They made that mistake when they went from being a 90 proof whiskey to an 86 and then dropped it then to an 80 proof whiskey. And what they have now is a sad version of what it once was. We haven't changed the recipe, Tom. It's exactly the same whiskey. Technically, maybe, but you've watered it down so much it's no longer the same. I mean, what if Coca-Cola did the same thing? What if you took that Coke, you say, okay, it's essentially the same. We just added, X% more water to it. It's the same recipe. It's not going to taste the same. I mean, you can do that with any food you want to prepare, right? It used to be, it used to be the same steak, but we've just taken this off of it. Jack Daniels wants you to believe it's still the same product when it's not. We haven't changed the recipe. No, you haven't changed the recipe per se, other than add a whole lot more water to it. So one can argue you have changed the recipe by adding water to a product that was just fine the way it was initially because you wanted to make more profit. You didn't care about putting out a good product anymore. You just wanted to make a higher profit. It's kind of where we've become as a society in everything, haven't we? Everything is about making a profit rather than doing the right thing. That's become acceptable in America too. People rarely hold that against a company because oh, that's just that's just the way it is, Tom. That's just capitalism 101, Tom. It's all about making a profit. It's not about doing the right thing. I guess my question is, why can't it be about both, man? Why can't we make a profit and do the right thing? Because it can be done, because it was done for a lot of years up until people decided they no longer want to do the right thing. Because there was a time that companies took care of their employees. There was a time when most companies offered pensions, and most don't now. There was a time when most companies hired only full time people or mostly full time people, and now most companies don't. Why don't they do that? Because they've decided making a profit makes more sense than doing the right thing. And most Americans are for that unless it affects them personally, right? These companies have a right to do whatever they want, Tom, until it affects me. America has become a greedy, greedy, selfish nation, a shell of what it once started out to be. But if you say something like I just said, all of a sudden it comes out as un-American. Tell me, if you don't like it here, go somewhere else. I don't dislike it here, but the idea of going somewhere else, people that say that, well, if you don't like it here, go somewhere else. Love it or leave it. Well, I love it, but I love it in my way, not your way. Uh, and to leave it would mean doing the impossible, having enough money to go somewhere else. Every time somebody says that, it's like you have the ability to say, okay, I'm going to snap my fingers and I'm going to be in a country that gives a shit about its people. And we don't have the ability to do that, right? Anyways, I digress. I love to talk about the ignorance of some. Uh, if you don't like it, leave it. Okay, snap my fingers, I'm gone. It doesn't work that way. People don't have the ability to magically go somewhere else. You ignorant jackass. But I rest my case. Okay, now I'm going to focus solely on the second Manhattan. Yeah, I can't get over how different the aromatics is by just changing the whiskey, right? Everything else in the bitters are the same. The cherry is the same. Everything is the same. The only difference is the whiskey. The earthiness of this Pinckney Band. I haven't had it for a while. I really like it, man. Again, it could be me and my interpretation, but I'm feeling this again. I'll give me a lot of peanut notes. Peanut. I want to make that clear, just in case somebody heard something different. Peanut. Yeah. So why I say that is that I don't feel this particular Manhattan as sweet as I did the first one, which is a lot of the reason why Manhattan purists will tell you you have to use rye because a bourbon will be too sweet in the drink, right? You got to use that spicy rye, otherwise the bourbon is too sweet. Unless you're using again a high rye bourbon. Again, a corn whiskey may make this drink too sweet because it is a corn whiskey, but this particular corn whiskey is not as sweet as the first one I had in the cocktail. It has much drier finish as well, but those peanut notes are kind of blowing me away, to be honest with you. With that peanut and black walnut notes, that's so I wasn't expecting the peanut notes, so I used the black walnut, but now I'm feeling that I got the black walnut bitters with the peanut notes of the whiskey, and it's hard to read without the whiskey in the bottle. Our racist American whiskey is made from a historical corn grown basically out of our front door. Anyway, I just wanted to make clear this is a corn whiskey, 100% corn whiskey, a rested corn whiskey. It's aged 1 year, so it's young whiskey. But then again, it's aged in smaller. I believe it's a 15-gallon barrel, so it's going to take that age just a little quicker, right? And you got a simpler mash, which is going to accept that barrel a little quicker as well. Oh man, I got to tell you, of the two versions, this one is definitely a little bit less sweet, which kind of works for my particular taste. Anyways, I digress. But I digress, man. So we'll take a little pause for the cause. I'm not sure how long, but just a little bit. But now I have that idea. I want to try two versions of a Manhattan using two different American single malt whiskeys and see what happens. Because now I've got something. Once I have an idea, I've got to run it. I've got to ride it till the wheels fall off. Man, that's how my mind works. And to be honest with you, I've come to reach an agreement with an old fashioned, right? But I always, I do prefer the Manhattan. The old fashioned to me anyway is always going to be just a little sweeter than my taste likes. But gosh, I do love the classic Manhattan. But I do love to do my versions of, right. So, anyways, I digress. I am Tom the Whiskey Whisperer, Whiskey Evangelist. Oh man, that is the nose on that. I just can't get over. Because I use exactly the same amount of sweet vermouth in both cocktails, but this one is so vastly different. It's got to be the whiskey. Again, those peanut notes, it just finishes so much drier. It's got to be that whiskey. Anyways, anyway, we don't care anymore, Tom. I am Tom, the whiskey evangelist, prolific whiskey drinker, purveyor wisdom man. All around good guys, aren't you?